This grant, the NORD grant, I received in conjunction with a class called Classics 318-418, Landscape Archaeology and Epigraphy, and this course was conducted in the region of Isparta, Turkey. The goals of the course were to teach students the methodologies of landscape archaeology and epigraphy. And epigraphy, I should say, is the study of writing on stone, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. That's my specialty. And it was also to teach the students the importance of partnering with local communities, the ethics of archaeology, things like that. So we received help from the NORD grant to buy a PowerPoint projector, which we used in Turkey, and it's still in Turkey to be used for future years, so the students could give presentations there. Satellite imagery, and I'll show you some of that in a minute. GPS devices, cameras, drawing materials, and squeeze brushes and squeeze paper. And this here is a squeeze brush. It's a special brush. And this is squeeze paper. You put this, you wet it and you put it over a stone and you beat it into the stone and it creates a reverse image of the writing. This is a very light writing, so and you get a reverse image, but you can go around and if you play with it in the light, if you want to look at it, you can see how you can possibly read that. That one's actually a very difficult one to read, but it was the only one I had at home with me today. All right, so here is the region we're talking about. You can see the black square in the map of Turkey. So we're in southwest Turkey. That square is the region of Isparta, Turkey. And the ancient cities in that area are these on this map. And the one, Konane, why don't I turn this on and use this? It's on. This one here is where we were based. It's now modern Günen. And we're right in between the big lakes, Lake Iridir, Lake Burdur. It's a very nice region. This is a picture of Günen, modern Günen, from an airplane. And this is the area we surveyed, especially up here. We're going to talk about this hilltop fortress site called Kale Tepe. Now, what is landscape archaeology? It's when you take your workers, in this case Western students and Turkish students, and you line them up about 5 or 10 meters apart. And you walk straight vectors across the landscape, and there you pick up anything you find, and you put it in plastic bags. And you can see the students here have plastic bags in their hand. And you draw a square around the area that they have surveyed, and you mark it with a GPS point. Here's my colleague Andrea De Giorgi, who is holding the GPS device to keep track of where this stuff is being picked up. Then we would come together and go over everyone's pottery, teach the students about the various types of pottery they found, the eras, just to get an idea in the field of what time frame we're talking about. Then we'd take it back to our survey house and wash the pottery. This is Anna Visser, who's from the anthropology department. And so this is washing the pottery. And then we would draw the pottery, and the NORD grant helped pay for a lot of the drawing equipment. So that was very good. And the NORD grant paid for the GPS device I mentioned a minute ago. So here's a site, Kale Tepe, which I showed you. Here's a sort of a panoramic view of it. And you can see from satellite imagery that you can see the wall of the city comes around like this, and it went around like that. You can still see it. And here, there's a monumental gate, and that's a picture of the monumental gate. We also did drawings of elevations, and a German team did those elevation drawings. We walk around and we record all the sites, and then we record on satellite imagery, which the NORD grant helped pay for, the spots where we were. All these red spots represent sites where we picked up lots of pottery. When you walk across the earth, when there hasn't been a settlement there, you don't really find anything. But when you get to a point where there's a settlement, the pottery never goes away. It stays there forever. And then there's suddenly a carpet of pottery, and you pick it up, and then you take it back and you analyze it. And these are all points of settlements, ancient settlements that we found in the previous 3 summers. And again, where Günen is where we stayed, where we were based, and so we were mainly going out around there. That's landscape archaeology in a very quick nutshell. Then there's epigraphy. Epigraphy is the study of writing on stone. We also would survey mostly the local towns and villages for inscriptions, which are, these are all funerary inscriptions. Sometimes they would be up high on walls, rebuilt into things. That's called spolia when they're rebuilt. This is an old Turkish bath of the town. And so we'd go up and we'd make squeezes of them. That paper impression using the squeeze brush. Again, Nord helped pay for that. This is Phil Trakowski, a Case Western student. That's Phil there in the back as well. Oh, by the way, the region of Esparta is famous for rose production. It's the #1 producer of rose oils and rose in the world. So the roses are everywhere. It's very nice. Also filming the inscriptions, this is Adam Kozak, a current classics major, and that camera is bought for by the Nord grant. And we would bring the stones back to the Museum of Esparta as quickly as we could. Sometimes we left until the end of the end of the season, many of them, and we bring them in mass, but some of them we brought a little bit at a time. Here are some examples of ones we found. This one's nice because it has sculpting on it. The dates of these inscriptions are all from the 3rd, 4th, and 5th century AD. They're all Roman. And this hairstyle here especially tells us this one's a late one, probably 5th century AD. They usually have pilasters on the side, a great bunch hanging down, and then here in the middle they say who the gravestone was for. Sometimes the inscription is across the top. Here's another satellite image where we've imposed dots where we found all the inscriptions in the village of Günen walking around the streets. One particular area that we studied was Roman roads and milestones, and this here is an ancient Roman road. You can't miss it when you see it, but it's very hard to find it sometimes. And along the roads, the Romans would mark every mile. They would put up a mile marker and tell you how far you were from a certain city or destination. And so we found this mile marker, which dates to the time of Diocletian. His name is on that. It's very difficult to read. You can see some of the letters coming out here, but you have to have a squeeze and you twist it in light. They jump out eventually. And you get a formula and you start going. So we worked on the Roman road system. Here's a road, the Via Sebaste, built by Augustus. And the roads that we found, which nobody else has published yet, ours extended from Konana. We found that one that I showed you going to Apollonia, and then we also found a road going to Agrai from Konane. So we're putting new roads on the maps of the ancient Roman world. The other thing that we wanted to teach the students was partnering with the local community. Here you see Stephanie Otola, student at CWRU, with a Turkish professor named Pervin. She was studying the ancient villages in the area to see whether they had running water, if they were still using mud brick houses and things like that. And all of that data being put into ArcGIS, the ArcGIS program. So here Stephanie is, she was doing a project for the class to interview local women to see what women's lives were like in the villages. So here she's talking. Here's I'll show some quick pictures of villagers. They all have great faces. They're all wonderful people. They're very nice. Very young, lots of children, lots of young mothers, old people with wonderful faces, families, Mickey Mouse, New York Yankees hat. We also invited all the people in the village to come to our survey house, and there we had a day where we gave speeches and we let the kids see the pottery and the inscriptions and things like that. So we were educating them about their past history. Here is Bilge Hermutslu. She's the director of this project. I should mention her. And in addition to These things, we also did some traveling. So this is ancient Sagalasas, the largest city in the area, largest ancient city in the area. It has this nice theater. It's built in this beautiful mountainous area. You can see the group of us students that I took there. And this is Termessos, another site we visited, which is further south on the Mediterranean Sea. Here's Karen Newton, Nathan Bensing, and Adam Kozak again. Here's Adam again and Nathan again. And this was a German student named Hagen. Finally, Didyma and the gratuitous daughter slide that was requested specifically by Blaine. I think I spent 10 minutes. I tried to keep it at 10, so I could have showed lots and lots of more pictures of landscapes and things like that. So that's the course and what the Nord Grant paid for in a nutshell. Any questions?
Did you say this was your third time?
This one was the third time. We took students twice. The first year, this past year in 2012, I didn't take students, but in 2010 and 11 I did. And the Nord Grant, they allowed me to use it both in parts of 2010 and 11. For instance, I couldn't find the squeeze brushes anywhere, and then I traveled to Athens, and there's a person that makes those in the Piraeus in Athens that the American School of Classical Studies works with. So I went and I bought 4 of them in the second year of the grant.
Did you say you make those impressions by putting the paper and beating it against?
Yeah, you wet the paper and then you set it against the stone and you try to make sure you remove as many of the air bubbles as possible first. And when you've done it right, it just grabs right onto the face of the stone and there's hardly any air left. So you just have to keep trying it, and it's very fragile when it's wet. It's kind of like coffee filter paper, but it's very difficult to work with when you're outside, the wind is blowing and there's grass and branches and things like that. So it can be a little bit tricky, but once you get it situated on the face, then you beat it into the stone, and then you let it dry as long as you can on the stone, and you get a hard copy reverse image. And then those can be manipulated in light. Raking light is what you really want to read an inscription, but inscriptions weigh hundreds of pounds, so you can't move them in the field very easily. You can lift them and maybe get them in a truck, and that's about it. Some of them are even too heavy for that, and then you need a tractor and things like that. So it's a way of having an exact reverse image that can be manipulated and can be carried in as light and can be studied and can be brought back to the U.S., for instance.
Why is pottery so significant?
Pottery is significant because it lasts, it's everywhere, and scholars have studied it and have developed a chronology of different types of pottery. So the kind of pottery we were finding, and also the different styles, you can tell how old it is. For instance, if it's before the time they used potter's wheels, there are many inclusions, what are called inclusions, and you can tell whether a pot has been thrown or if it's been handmade. And if it's handmade, it almost certainly means that it's prehistoric. And we got stuff from prehistoric, 10,000 BC, all the way up through modern times. If it's Byzantine pottery, it has a special kind of green glaze. If it's Roman pottery, it has a very bright red clay, and Sagalasas was famous for this bright red clay to make Roman pottery. We found earlier pottery. We found some pottery from about 600 BC that nobody else had found in that area. There was an inscription that was like from about 600 BC, not an inscription but a stele. It had pictures on it, clearly Persian. The Persians were here. The Lydians were here first. They're part of the Lydian Empire, and then the Persians around 540 BC took over the Lydian Empire, and then the Macedonians under Alexander the Great conquered the Persian Empire, and then the Romans conquered the Macedonians, and then after that, I get disinterested. But there's Ottoman period, stele and Arabic, and all these kinds of things. So, so you have a carpet of pottery that tells you the period. And you'd be surprised. You cannot see any buildings anymore, but there's pottery on the ground, and it tells you there was a settlement there. And most of these were probably huts and not anything great, but there are some bigger buildings. Is there?
The question I have, I know, different places, more local and around the United States, et cetera, that they say, you're not supposed to even leave a path anywhere. And so I think it's kind of interesting that you're very, you have a very clear plan on how everyone's going to navigate, but then you can just take the pottery, you don't...
Well, you have to get an elaborate permission to do this. The students and myself, we had to apply by December 1st for a research visa. And then the Turkish government took our application, vetted it, and then at the end of May approved it, and also the license for the whole survey. And so you have to get permission in advance. And while we're there, and we're living in basically a dormitory, a school dormitory there. With us must be a cultural minister representative who's to oversee the whole thing. We can pick it up from the field, but we can't take it with us. And if you take even the smallest piece of pottery, then you are in definite trouble. So that's part of the ethics, don't pocket anything. Even this ubiquitous pottery that's everywhere, they have nowhere to keep it stored really, but it's a part of their history, and the pottery is from the earlier times is the only thing that survives often and is the most important.
How easy would it be for like an amateur to go find the pottery?
Very easy, and I didn't mention it, but up on that high site, Kale Tepe, we were racing ahead of robbers who were finding the graves and robbing the graves ahead of us. Up here, so fresh graves that had just been opened up. And there's a big black market trade for whole pots and things like that. So in the graves is when you especially find an entire pot. So if you can find a cemetery, then you can find better stuff. But the local people and the trade, they are on top of it. So we had the local gendarme is his title. He's like the local police chief, military police chief. He worked with us, but of course half the time he's on the payroll. It's a difficult situation. So that's why it's important for archaeologists to document as much as they can before the stuff disappears.
So people are buried with the pottery? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, they're bones. Yeah, all bones
a whole piece, pottery piece
pot. Yes.
Buried with them.
Yes. We found a musical instrument made of bone, lots of pottery. Yeah. Most of the pottery is broken, but most of the robbers stole we didn't have an excavation permit, so we will starting I think in 2013. We had a survey. That's another thing. So it was only when other people had opened up the graves that we could go in there, and of course they stole all the good stuff, but they missed some things. Or if it was broken, it was easy to put back together. They didn't bother with it when it was already broken. So we were able to put back together some whole pots, and they missed this bone music instrument because it was broken in two.
So the mile marker you guys found?
Yes.
So
yes.
how'd that
Nathan Benson found it. Yeah.
How'd that get passed over for 1,700 years?
It was in a farmer's field. The alluviation is immense in this area, and so these mile markers they get under the soil, and then a farmer goes through and plows and hits it, and he pulls it up and he puts it to the side of his field, and that's where we found this one in a rock pile at the side of a farmer's field. There was another one we found, which the farmer, he found it in the field and he brought it back to his house, and it was sitting in his driveway. And so then we found it in his driveway, and we asked him where he found it, and he took us to his field and he showed us the exact spot where he found it. We found 3 milestones that are new that nobody else had seen, and then we had also recorded other ones that, I'm sorry, 4. We found 4 that nobody else had recorded, and about 7 others that others had seen. Some of these were in a cemetery, so they were brought from the farmer's field. One of the small village cemeteries sort of became a place for putting antiques, and so they served as pillars as you entered the cemetery and things like that.
How did they measure distances? And did they use miles as a unit?
The Romans used a Roman mile, yes. They had these specialized workers. What the Greek word is a batonist, who would record how many steps he took, and then he would have to keep track when the armies marched. And so they had people who kept track of how long they would walk, and then they would add up the number of steps, and then they would estimate. And they're very accurate when we, like Alexander's armies, when you take the modern march and the distances in the ancient maps, they're usually, they're within 10%, so.
So you continuing to take students in the summer?
I asked students if they wanted to go this summer, but none applied for the permit by December 1st because my colleague, Andrea De Giorgi, is going to Rome, so he's taking the students to Rome this year, and I think Rome was a bigger draw.
Are the students mostly classics majors, or are they from?
No, we had some classics minors. They all had to at least declare a minor in order to get, we have some departmental funding for travel, specifically for students, and they all had to, in order to get that money, the people who gave it said it goes to classics majors or minors. So they all had declared minors, but Anna Visser was from the anthropology department. Now she's a graduate student at Arkansas, which is one of the great anthropology programs in the country. Nathan Bensing was history major, classics minor. Adam Kozak's classics. Karen Newton is a graduate student in the World Lit program, but she focuses on Greek and Latin literature, and she's taking Greek and Latin. So. Who else? Art history, we had a couple art history students. So we cast our net wide because we don't have a lot of classics majors. And before we had stressed philology, the reading of Greek and Latin, but in the last few years we've tried to bump up the archaeological profile, and we've also changed our major, which is going to start next fall, so that students, if they want to just be what's called a civilization major, they only need to take 3 Greek or Latin courses instead of 8. So we're hoping that we get more interested in archaeology. Yeah.
Great.
So are the students also doing their own sort of smaller research projects that they're working on?
Yes. For the class, they all had to write a research paper. So Stephanie Otola was doing women's lives in modern villages of Turkey. Nathan Bensing did a paper on Roman roads. Anna Visser did something on bones. I don't remember exactly what that was. Yeah, so they each, whatever they were interested in, they wrote a paper on that.
I think we're going to need to move on, but thank you so much.
Yep.